Good Wednesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Harapsky. Right now, boat traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is being stopped after Israeli strikes hit commercial and residential parts of Lebanon, killing dozens, according to the health ministry. Right now, Israel says it is fighting Iran-backed Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. The Strait, south of Iran, reopening in the last 24 hours after Iran and the U.S. agreed to a 2-week ceasefire deal that is clearly fragile. It's part of a larger deal to negotiate the end of the war there. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says this deal is a victory for the U.S.
In last night's wave of more than 800 strikes, we finished completely destroying Iran's defense industrial base, a core pillar of our mission objective. The Iranians humiliated and demoralized. We control their fate, not the other way around. That's why they came to the table.
Israel says it supports President Trump's ceasefire decision. However, it does not apply to Lebanon. The ceasefire is welcome news across Israel, where some parts of the country have been dealing with constant attacks for weeks. NBC's Stephanie Gosk is in Tel Aviv with details.
News of a ceasefire is certainly welcome in neighborhoods like this in Tel Aviv. They've been dealing with bomb sirens and rocket attacks for weeks now. This gives everyone a bit of breathing room, and that's the idea. All sides agreeing not to attack each other, so longer-term peace plan negotiations can take place. Those negotiations set to start in Islamabad on Friday, but there are some real questions this morning about whether or not this ceasefire is going to hold. Right now, government officials in both UAE and Kuwait say they are coming under attack by Iranian rocket fire and drones. The other place to watch is Lebanon. Pakistani Prime Minister says Lebanon is part of the ceasefire deal, but the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, says it is not, and issued a warning to residents in southern Lebanon where Hezbollah, the Iranian-funded militia, has been launching attacks on Israel. They warned residents in that area to move out because the Israeli military was going to continue its attack on those Hezbollah strongholds. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Tel Aviv, Israel.
The news of the ceasefire is giving some Iranian Americans in Minnesota a bit of relief this morning. Sagi Sagizadeh grew up in Iran and moved to Minnesota 8 years ago. Her parents, grandmother, and other relatives, they still live in Tehran. She says they were scared when President Trump threatened to, quote, a whole civilization will die, end quote, if Iran didn't agree to a deal.
I feel guilty of being okay. Like, for me, it's news. For them, it's really the noise of bombardment and everything. I spoke with my mom, and she said the other night there was a thunderstorm, and she thought, like, it took me 5-something minutes to realize that it's a thunderstorm, it's not bombing.
She says no matter what comes next, she hopes the people of Iran are not forgotten. Today, Minnesota House Republicans are holding a committee hearing focused on school safety. They have less than 6 weeks left in this session to pass bills. And we have a look at today's proposal from House Republicans. It would create a pilot program assessing threats to school safety. The plan would cost $4 million. It would include one school district in each congressional district. This comes after Democrats tried and failed to pass an assault weapons ban before Easter, something House Republicans voted to block.
I get it on this gun thing, but they can say no to me now on this gun violence prevention, and Minnesotans are going to say no to them come November.
Republicans have had proposals on school safety overall, which then translates into community safety. That definitely has bipartisan support.
Earlier this morning, lawmakers also met over a proposal to set aside $100 million for small businesses impacted by ICE activity in Minnesota. Right now, the Minnesota Department of Human Services commissioner in the hot seat after a tense hearing at the state capitol. DHS Commissioner Shireen Gandhi faced questions from the state's Fraud Prevention Committee about a report that found about $13 million went to groups with missing or late progress reports. That means money was going out without proof the work was being done. Gandhi, who took over the role in February, says that's not acceptable.
That is outrageous. It's unacceptable. It is creating the potential for fraud and other problems, and it needs to be dealt with accordingly.
Gandhi says the department has increased training for all staff. Supervisors will also be held responsible for double checking everything. Happening right now, the Minneapolis City Council considering whether to end a ban on adult bathhouses and sex venues. The city had a ban in place since the 1980s during the height of the AIDS epidemic, but activists say medical advancements have made the need for the ban obsolete. Ian Russell digging into that debate.
Like anything in life, times can certainly change.
Very different than where we were in 1988.
Minneapolis banned men's bathhouses nearly 40 years ago, a change that Aliveness Project Director of Development Dylan Boyer says worked back then.
It made sense in 1988, right? Because we are at the height of the AIDS epidemic then.
But like anything, times have changed.
Today looks very different with HIV.
The Minneapolis City Council is now set to consider allowing bathhouses that allow sexual activity. A change that would require several ordinance changes. Language was changed a few years ago to remove portions that stigmatize those with HIV and AIDS. Boyer says medical advances have made prevention easier, and that would be the goal if this is approved.
It's in a controlled space where we are providing resources, providing community outreach to, and actually connecting people to care.
Boyer says this also would not be a place to pay for sex.
This is a community space that should you want to engage in sex, you can in a safe manner.
The number of new HIV and AIDS cases have remained largely steady since 2016, hovering around 250 to 300 each year, according to the Minnesota Department of Health. MDH says there are roughly 9,500 people living with HIV or AIDS in the state.
There may be folks that will never step foot in a place like Aliveness Project to get a free HIV test, but they would go to a public bathhouse. And we want to be able to meet those folks where they're at there.
A change that Boyer says still has a ways to go, but one he believes makes sense right now.
People in Minneapolis and in Minnesota deserve to have that safe space.
Right now, Hennepin Healthcare is working to stabilize its leadership. The hospital board appointing Dr. John Cumming as the new interim CEO effective Friday. Dr. Cumming led HCMC during a previous transition. It also follows the resignation of two top hospital leaders in recent days. It's a critical time for the hospital as it deals with a massive budget deficit and trying to secure long-term funding. HCMC is pushing for state leaders to raise the Hennepin County sales tax created to build Target Field by 1%, with most of the money going to try and keep the hospital open. But it isn't the only major hospital in the area struggling financially. Jennifer Hoff has more.
The Hennepin County Medical Center may be making headlines now, but just 7 miles north, a similar hospital faces the same financial hurdles, despite North Memorial Health's CEO sounding the alarm for several years.
What's different about North Memorial is we've never had any sort of supplemental funding.
The Level 1 Trauma Center has more than 100,000 emergency room visits every year and 75% of its patients covered by government programs. A key safety net hospital laying off employees, still down $50 million in 2025.
The problem has gotten so substantial, we just can't cut ourselves out of this problem.
Trevor Swalish supports the Hennepin County sales tax proposal, even if it's just $24 million a year, the bulk of it going to HCMC that, unlike North Memorial, also pays for other federal tools to close the Medicaid reimbursement gap that's only getting bigger to changes in work requirements and eligibility restrictions.
Even if we did get the tax, that's not going to be enough to make sure that we have a sustainable health system for the Twin Cities, for the state, for the region. It's going to take some investment for us to create new ways of doing things in healthcare, and it's incredibly challenging when you're already weak financially.
Swalish suggesting merging with HCMC and being even more efficient.
There is waste in the system. There are a lot of middlemen in the system.
Closing isn't an option, but if the hospital to its south actually does, could North Memorial handle twice as many patients?
The question's a good one, but the answer is no. There don't seem to be many things that we could look at and say, yeah, that's a net positive for what's coming.
Jennifer Hoff reporting there. Swalish will be one of many leaders at the Capitol on Thursday when the sales tax bill gets its first committee hearing. Lawmakers giving it mixed reviews, saying you can expect many amendments. HCMC adamant without state help, it would have to start closing come June. Right now, the future of a historic monument in New Ulm is in limbo. The city council says they need more than $11 million to restore Herman the German. Right now, council members are looking for ways to fund that project. City leaders say no matter what, the cost won't fall on taxpayers because the monument is more than 130 years old. It has been taken apart before and it can be rebuilt and restored.
This is very encouraging to see that there's potential and we can perhaps see not the light at the end of the tunnel because funding will be a big issue, but this is a quantum leap for us to get this far.
Herman the German is usually open from May through Labor Day and during Oktoberfest weekends. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.